Um, so, as Carrie already mentioned, I am a lawyer. And I'm actually a very moved lawyer right now. So, see, we do have emotions because I had no idea. About this. So, thank you so much. But yeah, very, very moved lawyer. We do have emotions. But I understand most people don't like lawyers. So if you want to get up and leave right now, I promise I won't hold it against you. Just take your food. That's right. I've been practicing cyber law since 1999. I got into it with Y2K, and I've been trying to learn ever since what I'm doing. And I've done a lot, I've seen a lot, and I wake up every day worried about what I don't know. Worried about what the next attack's going to be. Worried about what the next law or privacy regulation's going to be. And I think whether we're talking about individuals or we're talking about companies, regardless of professions or roles, it's almost like a sign of maturity in this industry to know that there is so much that we don't know. And that one of our top jobs is to continue learning and continue trying to improve what we know and then where we get it from. And that's why a conference like this is so great. So, again, thank you all very much. The topic of my talk today is cybersecurity is a team sport. Why team strategies and processes are essential for managing cyber risk. And this topic came about over years of doing my day job. My day job is essentially like a cyber first responder. I counsel clients through security events, incidents, data breaches, and then the aftermath, the regulatory investigations that follow up. And it's a fairly lengthy process, and it's very, very intense. There's a lot of crisis management involved, and sometimes it's just managing our clients and helping them understand that, look, this is horrible right now, but let's keep our heads together. Let's keep our senses about us, make good decisions, and we'll get through this. It may not be pretty, but we'll get through it. And so where this topic came from is over the years I've learned I can almost predict the outcome of a case with my first call with my clients, my first meeting with them, because I can get an assessment of, number one, who's the point person? Who am I dealing with? Who's in the lead? What's their personality? How seriously are they taking this? Are they panicking? All these kind of things. And I can get a pretty good feel after that first interaction of how it's going to turn out, because I know what it's going to be like working with them as a team. And the best, the sharpest ones usually have the best outcomes, and at least the most efficient. Obviously, we don't control the facts, but that has so much to do with this. So that's where this topic came from. And I know right now some of you are sitting here wondering, everybody always does, why is a lawyer talking to me about this role in incident response? What does a lawyer have to do with that? Anybody in here wondering that right now? Come on, raise your hands. I know somebody is. I know some of you are. What does a lawyer have to do with incident response? And so, as you're sitting here mesmerized by NASA's image of a black hole on the screen behind you, you're seeing these companies pop up. All these companies that have made their way into the news because of data breaches. And so I want you to stop and think about something. Why? Why do you know about these companies being in the news because of their data breaches? Do you think they were just good corporate citizens and they just wanted to air their dirty laundry to the world because they felt it was the right thing to do? No, of course not. No company's going to do that. It's because they have to tell you. It's because the laws mandate that they protect information in certain ways. The laws mandate that when there is a breach of that protection and the privacy of that information is compromised, that they let people know, that they disclose it to the individuals affected, that they notify regulators, that they notify the media in many cases. You see, these are legal issues. Cybersecurity is a legal issue. And we have a lot of different kind of laws up here. You'll see security laws, privacy laws, we have unauthorized access laws. All of these things come into play in the world of cybersecurity. And we have international, federal, state. We now have 50 states with breach notification laws, 20 plus states with some security laws. And there's a difference between the two. Then you have industry regulations that you've got to comply with. And then you have contracts, something most people overlook. They don't think about how many contracts they are signing where they're agreeing and committing to do certain things to protect information and protect their networks. So they just sign them and they go, not realizing that is law. It is contract law. It's the law between the parties. So there are tons of laws out there, and as I stand here, we're getting new laws. They're being written, they're being enacted, and we do many data breaches each year. And every time we do one that's got a national scope, if I haven't done one within the last couple of weeks on that involving those same states, we go back and check them to make sure that some state hasn't updated their law since the last one. This is definitely a legal issue. So there's your role for lawyers. Everybody happy with that? Y'all going to tolerate us now? But there's more. There's the business side. And look, I've been speaking on this issue for a lot of years. I've been trying to get the message out to clients, to get them to see and understand what's at stake here. And I know the objections. I know we have an IT guy. Man, I hear that all the time. Small to mid-sized companies. We have an IT guy. And when I do my air quotes IT guy, I'm not talking about those of you in this room. I'm not talking about professionals who take their job seriously and who try to do a good job. I'm talking about the friend of a cousin of a brother-in-law who, if you give him a six-pack of beer and let him do it on a Saturday night, will take care of your network because he really gets computers. And we laugh. I have many ransomware cases that we've handled in 2019 brought on by the IT guy. The IT guy who was supposed to be backing up the network, charging for it. And then, when it happened, guess what? Yeah, sorry. Didn't work. Sorry. Man, what do you expect? I'm just doing this as a hobby. Just trying to help you out. Good luck. Okay, then we have the next one. We have the IT company. I'm not talking about the professionals. I'm not talking about people who come here to educate themselves and associate with people and learn and get better at their trade or their profession. I'm talking about the collection of IT guys who figure that they can make more money if they join together and put up a really slick website and say some things like HIPAA certification and all this stuff. I had one case in this year where the IT company, the MSP, got hit with ransomware. All their clients then got encrypted. All the medical professionals relying on them. And what did they say? Sorry, nothing we could do. Our backups were encrypted also. Yeah, we don't have insurance. We're done. We're just going out of business. We're going to be taking down all the virtual servers and wiping them here in the next couple of days. So, good luck. This is real. This is real. Fortunately, we were able to get a copy of our client's data so we could then have done what needed to be done with it. But the IT company, I hear it. We got an IT, or we're compliant. We're compliant all the time. Y'all know what compliance means, right? Versus security. You know the answer. Or then there's we have cyber insurance. Look, I'm a huge fan of cyber insurance. Every company should have cyber insurance unless you are so big that you can fund all your operations, in your response and investigation and all that, like an Exxon or somebody. Maybe you carved them out. Everybody else should have cyber insurance, especially the small to mid-sized company, because that's the only way they can afford to do what needs to be done to properly respond to an incident and keep that molehill from becoming a mountain. Okay? But cyber insurance, you know what it does? It pays money. It pays money. It doesn't secure your network. It doesn't decrypt your data. It doesn't restore your backups. It doesn't make your practice, your business run again. It doesn't restore your operations. It pays money. It's no substitute for security. So that's not a reason to not have good security. And then there's but we're not a large company, or we're not a tech company. We know how hackers feel about small to mid-sized businesses. They love them because they usually don't have the sophistication of defenses that are needed to protect them, and they have data that is perfectly valuable for sale or use. And then here's my favorite one that we used to hear all the time. But our data is not that valuable. We just do X, or we just make this widget. Nobody cares about our data. Y'all ever heard that one? You get that all the time. Well, we've got an answer. Now, one of my sons told me, Dad, you have to start working memes into your presentation. So I got this meme here for you. Oh, you still think your data is not valuable? Tell me more about this ransomware. Ransomware doesn't care how valuable your data is. Hackers using ransomware, they care less what they can get on the black market because it's valuable to you, or you wouldn't have it. It's valuable to you, which means you'll pay money to get your data back and get your systems operating again. So see, they've evolved, they've adapted. And ransomware just dispelled that whole argument. And look, we all know about the companies. We've been watching the news. The city of Albany got hit with it last spring. And really, though those of us in this room know what an epidemic it's been for years, the public really started noticing it with Atlanta, Albany, Baltimore, all these other cities. And then here in Texas, we had the 20-plus counties get hit here just a couple of months ago, really raising awareness to this issue. And then really one of my favorite ones. Y'all like Arizona iced tea? Arizona iced tea got hit with it a few months, back in the spring. And I loved one of the tweets that came out. It said it took Arizona Beverages days to get an incident response team in. Days to get an incident response team in, leaving some to process customer orders manually. The company's response to the ransomware attack was described as you can all read it. How would you like to have that be the description of your company? Now look, working as an attorney for companies and clients, I'm not going to point the blame at anybody on this because there are so many variables that come in that may take things outside your control. It may have taken them days. You know why? Because they might have had cyber insurance, but they might have not known how to use it. They might have not known what lawyers they could use, what forensics firms. And it might have taken them days to get that ironed out before they could ever start the actual response. Something you need to think about. Okay? Or they could have just had no idea what they were doing because who cares about iced tea, right? Our data is not that valuable. Who knows? None of us know. But what we do know is they were left running their company with a big chief legal pad and a big fat pencil like we see in school, elementary school. Think about that. How many companies could operate manually today with a big tablet or a notepad and have to run your business that way? None of us. But it cost them millions of dollars. Why? This is your first takeaway. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's not just a legal issue. It's an overall business risk issue. And it has to be treated as such. Now, y'all know this. We've been hearing this for a couple of years. We've been talking about it. It is an overall business risk issue. But the problem is, we may know it in our heads, and we in this room may know it in our hearts, but the people we're working for may not have gotten it through their heads yet. And they still think, oh, we have a great CISO, they're handling it. It's good, we're good. And that's not the case. So the question is, since it is an overall business risk issue, who's on the team? Who are our players? We have an internal team and we have an external team. Okay? And our goal is to address cyber risk holistically, not just pick out little bits and pieces that may be the flavor of the day, because those flavor of the days change real quick. And so we've got to look at the big picture. We know we've got the CISO on the team, if you've got one. We know we've got folks in IT on the team. We've got information security on the team. But what about your business players? Who from the business unit is there? Are they sitting together in, learning of these risks and what these risks can do? How you could have the same thing happen to your company as Arizona IST, which I love, by the way. I'm glad they're up and running again. Your risk officers. Cyber's a risk. Risk needs to be at the table on this. Legal, very self-serving. We lawyers are good at that. Legal needs to be at the table. Your in-house folks, somebody needs to get it. Your privacy officer, your financial officer, your operations officer. All of these people have a role because cyber risk is a huge pie. And now that I'm thinking about it, I should have used a pie as a graphic. I'll do it next time. But it's a huge pie, and you've got all these different players with some little role in how to address this. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You've got HR. A lot of these things are employee issues. A lot. We need HR in there. You need your audit committee many times. Sometimes they're catching obvious things that are obvious to them, but we might not see. And you need your marketing folks in there. Now look, not every case, not every company. There's no one-size-fits-all. There's nothing easy about this. I can't just give an easy answer. These are points to just think about and say, for our organization, what works best? Where do we need these players to cover the risks we have? You have your external team, your legal, outside legal counsel. You may have managed service provider, managed security service provider. Okay, you need them. You may have your really hardcore cybersecurity firm, the ones that you'll call in to do forensics or to get the bad guys out if they're really deeply rooted in your network. Then we get to insurance. Insurance is part of your team. Cyber insurance is part of your team. Because every company should have cyber insurance, right? Y'all, yes, you got that. Every company should have cyber insurance. But cyber insurance policies many times have language in them that say, number one, you cannot use any vendors unless they have been approved by us or they are on our panel or list of approved vendors. That includes your lawyers, your forensics firms, your PR firms, all of these firms, all of us. We have to be pre-approved on many of these policies, or else you're not getting coverage, okay? And so they require that, unless you go ahead in the beginning and get those vendors approved while you're getting the policy, okay? But it means you have to know about this and you have to think about it. All right, next step. Many of these insurance policies obviously require notification of the incident. You got to put them on notice. But then in many cases they require pre-approval for significant expenditures. So let's put ourselves in a ransomware case. It's Friday morning. Your company's hit with a ransomware case. And you go, oh, what do we do? Oh, I got it. Let's call such and such. Let's call this security firm, whoever, to help us. And then somewhere a little later, someone says, what about your cyber insurance? And he says, oh, we didn't know. Do we even have it? Well, somebody better go find it and get a copy of your policy. Then you got to read and say, can I use this firm? Can I engage them? If so, under what terms? All of these things have to be done before you can even start your response, or else you're going to lose your insurance coverage. Then you want to pay your ransom. Well, you got to get pre-approval to do that for it to be covered. So you've got to do all these things ahead of time. Your broker and your carrier need to be on your team. And you need to know where they have a role and what that role is. Now, here's a trick question. How do you get all that if your system's encrypted with ransomware? Hopefully you got a copy of the policy somewhere, because you're going to need it, right? Okay, PR firms, your notification vendor, the ones that get the credit product, put them in the letters, mail out the you have been, a victim of a data breach letter or notice of a data breach letter. They need to be on your team, obviously not all the time, but you need to know who they are. You need to have their contact information available. They need to be part of your plan. Law enforcement. Look, I'm a huge believer in working with law enforcement. And I know they are very stretched on resources. And they're not going to jump on every case they can. It's not practical. But there are cases where they will come in and they'll help and they'll do what they can. I'm a firm believer in notifying them anytime I have a case I think will be appropriate. But how do you do it? Do you go through ic3.gov, do your report, and then you're done? It's best to know these people. It's best to have their email for an individual that you know. Have their direct line so you can call and leave them a message. They're busy. It's the best chance you have of getting back to them. So, some questions to consider. Do you have a cyber risk committee? And I don't care what you call it. The name's not magic. Some group within your organization that actually talks to each other. They know each other. They have one singular goal when they communicate about this issue, and that is addressing cyber risk. You can call it whatever you want, but do you have that? Okay? Even if it's sitting down over coffee on Tuesday mornings and just chatting, some communication is better than none. Who's your head coach? Who's the head coach over this committee, this group, this issue? Who are your coordinators? Okay? Who owns the proactive risk management phase? Who owns? Somebody's got to answer at the end of the day. Who owns incident response? So that you have one individual who is responsible at the end of the day for accepting responsibility and saying, we're getting prepared. Never say we're prepared. You're never prepared. We're getting prepared. We're getting better. And I'll be in charge. And the buck stops with me. You really need that. And have you considered the personalities of these different team members? Because some, their personalities don't fit their role. Someone who's good on proactive risk management may not necessarily be good under the pressure of an incident response. They may have a different personality type that doesn't fit well between the two. They may not have the right skill sets or experiences. So take these intangibles into consideration when you're putting your team together. So if you ever do have to have that first communication with me, I look and I go, man, y'all got it together. You know what you're doing. You're going to be good to work with. You're going to do what I ask. You're going to tell me if I'm asking something stupid, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to come to an agreement. You're going to be diligent. You're experienced. You actually care. You actually care. At the end of the day, it always comes back to that caring. And so when we're planning, we've got to think about who do we want on the field at given times. Like I said earlier, not everybody needs to be in these meetings all the time. They might not even need to be meetings. They could be a 6-7 minute phone call. Say we're going to talk for 6 minutes about this, nothing else. But it's a case-by-case basis. And that's the point. You can't just hire someone to say, come be our security. I'm thinking back to the, y'all like Christmas Vacation? God, it's one of my favorite movies. And I can't remember the company CEO's name. Anybody remember it? What was his name? Anyway, when he's sitting at the table and he goes, get me somebody, get me anybody. You know, you can't just be like, give me some security. Give me some company to give me security, any security. That doesn't work. It's a process. It's a step-by-step analytical process where you've really got to go through this. So then you get to the question of, are your players, do they know their roles? Do they know they're a part of this group? So they don't learn about it the first time when you convene an incident response team and they say, oh, I didn't know I was on that. Okay, what do you want me to do? No, wrong. They should already know. Okay, are they eligible to play? This means, have they been approved? Have your vendors been approved? Do you have engagement agreements in place? Do you know the terms that they're going to work under? This is not the type of thing you need to be dealing with when you've had a ransomware. You know, and you're sitting there on your cell phone trying to reach people. Do they communicate? Do they understand each other's language? Do you have the logistics for communication? Look, we're all required to have an incident response plan now. It's just a given. It needs to be in writing. My friend Mary Cheney, I know she did a great job of covering this. I don't always pull out an incident response plan when I'm leading a company through this. But I'll tell you what we do always need. We need to know how to reach the key people. We need to know how to reach that committee or that incident response team. Because if you're hit with a ransomware case and you're going to your computer to type in their email address or look up their phone number, guess what? It ain't there. You can't. You've got to have your alternative means of communicating available at your fingertips. And I'm going to tell you what, if I were you, I would have that communication sheet and I'd take a picture of it and I'd have it in my cell phone pictures of who you need to reach and how you need to reach them, what their numbers are. Because your communications really are most critical responding to a crisis event. And then how often do they practice? How do you train? How do you do your incident response planning, your tabletops? That's your scrimmages. Do you actually try it out to make sure these people know what they're doing and who they're doing it with? It's all critical. So what's the next takeaway? Takes a team of many different stakeholders within and outside of the organization working together as a team to effectively manage this cyber risk and to be prepared for responding to these kind of situations. So then the question is, what does the team do? Well, this is the easy part. Here's your little checklist of common cybersecurity best practices, right? Just pull this up. Let's go do these, check these off, and everything's good. You're golden. I know this is a very rudimentary list. I know this is this sophisticated group at Secureworld is way ahead of this list. But I'm going to tell you, most companies out there that don't have someone at Secureworld right now and that aren't actively engaged in becoming better professionals, they can't get past the first couple of points on this list. That should concern you. Because you know why? Your company's doing business with many of them. These are your third-party vendors. These are the people you are bringing in to process your data. These are the third-party, really cool, latest, greatest, cloud-based, cutting-edge technology that you're hiring to help manage your contacts and your customer relations and all this stuff. So you need to know not just what you're doing, but you need to know what they're doing. How do you do that? It's a long process. I can't cover it up here this quickly. Y'all know that. But to me, there's a few things you can look at that's kind of your first conversation, your canary in a coal mine, if you will. So you got to think about what is your role in the picture, right? How does this company handle things like policies and procedures and training of employees? Simple enough, right? We all do it. You'd be surprised how many don't. This is rudimentary and it's cheap. It's not like you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, especially for a small company. Do they have multi-factor authentication? That's a big telltale sign right there. Do they do phishing training of their workforce? Big telltale sign. What about their backups? If they're processing your data, don't you want to know if they have backups? And where it is and how secure it is? These are things you need to ask them. Do they have an incident response plan and an incident response team? If they've got this, you're in pretty good hands there looking at them. And do they have cyber insurance? Because that means they have looked at their risk and they've tried to address it. So here's the question. A company like Equifax, did they not know they needed to do some rudimentary step like patching? Of course they did. So why didn't they? Because it's hard to do even the simplest of things at scale. And that's why the law and the regulations require having a program in place to do these things, a risk management program. And as recently as this past January, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, in their press release following the settlement of the Neiman Marcus case, said, a business shall implement and maintain reasonable procedures. This isn't just a checklist. It's having a process in place. It's having procedures in place to make sure that those little basics, those common best practices, don't slip through the cracks. So that leads us to this question we always talk about. What is reasonable cybersecurity? Okay? Too little? Just check the box. Well, that's not reasonable. Too much? We can't boil the ocean. We always hear that. We can't do everything. And so the question is, what's reasonable? I'm a lawyer. My answer is it depends. It depends on the facts. It depends on your organization. But it depends on the process. Reasonable cybersecurity is a process. It is not a definition. It is a process for addressing your risk. And you start by your risk assessment, and then you do your strategic planning, then you implement, then you create your internal processes around it, and then you test it, and then you take what you've learned and you've updated it, and you reassess your risk again, and then you start all over. It never ends, because the hackers never quit hacking. They never quit attacking you. They're always evolving and adapting. So you have to evolve and adapt. It starts with assessing your cyber risk. And in many ways, I believe this is perhaps your most important step. And I have this great Sun Tzu quote here. You can all read it because I'm talking too much and I'm a little short on time. But really the question is, how do you assess, how do you protect against what you don't know? How do you protect what you don't know you have? Okay, we're working with quite a few companies gearing up for California Consumer Privacy Act. We did the same thing with GDPR. One of the first questions is, what type of data do you have and where is it? Stop and think about that. Because most organizations can't answer that question because they don't know. You've got to start with the basics. What are we trying to protect? What's our goal here? Well, what is it and where is it? You got to assess this. You got to learn it. You got to know it. You got to know what rules apply. You got to do it on a case-by-case basis because no two companies are alike. But it's this process that shows you're really trying and you really care and you're really taking meaningful steps to secure your organization and protect your data. And so then one thing I hear a lot is, okay, how do we prioritize this? How do we know where to start? Well, number one, any action is better than no action in most cases. So using this as an excuse for doing nothing is not going to get you very far. Certainly not from a legal basis or a regulatory basis. But you have to look at your risk and you have to analyze it. And it's not the old simple risk equation. Risk equals probability times loss. It's a lot more complicated because we're talking about an overall business issue. And look, there's nothing magic about this formula that I put up here. I just came up with it. Then others have come up with great ones. And there's great organizations out there that are talking about nothing but how to assess risk. This is no substitute for that. It's just a way to think about it. Because we're talking about probability. We're talking about losses. We're talking about the cost to implement what we're recommending, the time to implement, the impact on your operations and your resources, right? Any business could be secure if you just filled all their computers with cement and threw them in the bottom of the ocean. That doesn't help. So you've got to take all these things like the detriments to your productivity into account when you're doing it. And so the real takeaway here is reasonable cybersecurity is a process. It's not a definition. It's a process. I can't tell you what reasonable cybersecurity is. So the next question is, once you have your team in place and you understand what your risks are, what do you do from there? Now, let me ask you a question. Out of 20 years of doing this kind of work, what do you think the most glaring weakness is that I've seen? Lack of hardware, services, gadgets, and gizmos. Lack of support from management. I know we love to talk about that one. Lack of funding is a big one. Lack of talent. Lack of skills and knowledge. Could probably go into talent. Or lack of strategy. Most glaring thing I see is a lack of strategy. Because the strategy many times is what helps you make the use of what it is that you have. You may not be able to get more of the stuff listed above, but if you make the best use of what you have, that goes a long way during that reasonableness phase of showing, hey, we did the best we could with what we had. And so to make sure you're using your strategy, ask yourself, who in your organization is seeing the whole playing field? Who's watching the flow of the game to see how all these tools we've been buying and all these services actually fit together and work together to solve a problem that we have a decent understanding of. Because buying a bunch of individual things that don't work together to do that, it's not very good because you have gaps all over the place. Someone has to see the strategy. Someone has to evaluate the intangibles of the players, of the people involved, to make sure they're doing their job, to make sure, going back to the Equifax case, somebody just dropped the ball on an occasion so that you have redundancies in place and you're observing all this and you can see it and you have one cohesive team playing. Who's doing your analysis and your strategic planning? Who's doing the thinking? Because at the end of the day, somebody's got to be thinking and analyzing the situation. And so that leads us to strategic leadership and planning. What does your strategy consider? Your things like your risk analysis. That's really where it starts. If you don't know your risks, you can't address them. Your resources. Who's on your team? Who's on your team in different situations? How is your team executing? That's what you saw, all those great coaches on the page just before. They're watching the execution of their team. They have a plan in place. They have a strategy. That's what we need to be doing. They're watching, your third-party vendors, your nth party way down the line. You're auditing them. You're not just trusting when they sign the contract and say, yeah, we're going to protect the data. Sure, give us the deal. You're actually doing some due diligence and checking because they may very well be the ones to get you in trouble. Because guess what? When you entrust your data to that little small vendor 3 layers down and they have an incident or a breach, and it was data that you collected from your customers and entrusted with them, it's your breach. Your name's going to be in the headlines. Okay? It's not going to be their name. It's your name. It's your customers who are going to be frustrated. You're going to get the regulatory requests, the letters from, whoever is your regulatory agency. So you got to make sure you know where you're putting your data and that you can trust them. You got to prioritize and execute based upon evolving threats, because these threats change. They change so quickly, the attacks that we're seeing. You got to keep your eye on this and make adjustments. How many great coaches do you see? They go into the game, the halftime, and their team looks like it's just flat. And they come out the second half, and they light it up, and they win the game, and they're the champions because they made great adjustments on the fly as the circumstances change. It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose. That doesn't mean you don't do a plan. You do a plan. But be ready to adapt when situations change. And planning helps you be better able to do that when you have to. And so really that brings me to this question. Our objective is to win. But what is a win in cybersecurity? We're at war. Cybersecurity is war. We have people attacking us, attacking our companies because they want what we have, and they want to forcefully take it from us. So what is a win in that situation? So that brings me to this. Tiger Woods. Man, y'all remember back in the 90s? This guy was the greatest. Nobody could touch him. Won every tournament he played in almost. Most feared player in the PGA. Was that the win? To never get touched? To be perfect? Never even go through the battle? Or then we got this guy. This guy's been through hell. This guy's been under the gun. He's fought through the hardship. He's dealt with the adversity. He's gone through the battle. You're going to go through the battle. But what matters is that at the end of the day, you come out this guy. Last spring, this guy that won the Masters, when nobody ever thought he would do it again. Okay, he used to be the little darling. He was perfect. Never got touched. That's not realistic. Your company's never going to be that. You're going to get hit. You're going to take punches. You're going to face adversity. You're going to go through that hardship. But the key is to go through that hardship and come out better. Your resilience, your ability to adapt and keep playing and keep producing. That's what your company's there for. And so really that brings me to the final takeaway. And that is, winning is the withstanding of the attacks against you so that your company can stay focused on its primary mission. Doesn't mean you're not going to have adversity, but that it can stay focused on its primary mission and you can be resilient. And it comes from your preparation, your resilience, and your continuously learning and adapting. That's, to me, how you win at this game. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.